Alright, so in this tutorial, I'm gonna go over the animation. Basically what I did. Well, I did that before, but I'm gonna show technically what I did here. From here to here, right, from 0 to 8, right, it looks like nothing's happening, right? I wanna go back and forth. Again, that is using just clicking on this and this, right, to go back and forth. I am not holding the Alt key. You hold the Alt key if you want to scrub, right? Just to go between major keyframes is your either this and this. Okay, that's what I'm doing right now, this or this. So from 0 to 8, right, frame 0 to 8, this is considered a moving hold, where the ball does a subtle squash, which acts as an anticipation, just like in traditional animation. So if I scrub it, right, holding the Alt key this time, right, holding the Alt key, you hold the Alt key and you scrub it, okay? So I'm gonna scrub it, see how it squashes. This is my anticipation, meaning that it's gonna anticipate leaping forward, but in doing so, it needs to generate energy. You know, you have to generate energy by squashing. It goes back up. That was done using this. Okay, I'm gonna do everything in real time, but I just want to give a general overview. Squish, goes back up, and this is what you call the moving hold. It's a hold, but it is subtle movement within the hold, moving hold. Then on frame 14, right, it does the initial leap. Okay, from here to here. Okay, that's, and then from 8 to 14, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is my contact. Bop, 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 bop. You will notice that it's a perfect arc. Okay, bop, bop. So I'm kind of playing it again, just using the greater than less than sign without the Alt key. Okay, here in the in between the highest peak, okay, it is stretching, where I use these squash and stretch to stretch. Right. Oh, by the way, you're gonna want your controller, right, to be in object mode, right? Your movement handles, which is again Control Shift right click, object mode. You want that object mode. I think I'll put that in here afterwards, or maybe I'll just put that in right now. So I'm gonna pause the video. All right, so like I said, I put in the image here. Right, you hold the control and the right mouse, and you click and hold in order for to select that object mode. That's actually really critical to get this to do it like this, because if not, it's gonna do this, and it's gonna do, you know, it just makes it not accurate, right? So you want it to object mode. Anyway, so going back to the review of what I'm talking about, right? So here it does stretch, right? Also here it does stretch, and then boom, this is the contact point at frame 20. It does a subtle little roll, okay, because it is rolling, right? It's rolling with the spin all, okay. The spin all, right, is what is causing the rotation right here. Remember the spin all, this guy right there, right? If I select it, spin all, okay, and then boom, and then boom. If I scrub, bop, 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 see the rotation, and then bop, bop, contact on frame 31, and then there's another subtle little roll, like over here on frame 20, a subtle little roll, and then bop, bop. Subtle little roll into a smaller final hop, bop, and then it rolls, comes to a stop. Okay, so that's the whole, I guess you could say, battle plan for this animation. Bop, 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 squish, and pop, big old leap, and then contacts, roll a bit. This here is to emphasize the impact and the contact, right? And then into a second smaller leap to contact, and then the last smaller little bounce into the roll, right? Ba 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 ba. Okay, so that's everything. Alright, so this is a follow-up video. This is making this part of the video after the fact, going through midway through the tutorial series. I wanted to make this and show this so you can visually see what I was talking about in terms of the animation, the frame count, and versus the distance traveled. So here it is, right? Okay, so here's frame 0, and here's the ball, and then in between that, right here, okay, it's a subtle little squash. That's on frame 4. And then at frame 8, it bounces back up, so you can see the generic little onion skin that I made, right? So I talked about that before. And then here is the next shot, where it's at frame 14, where it's in the midway point of the very first bounce, right? And that's frame 14. And then here's the impact at frame 20. So I talked about this in the previous videos, right? But I was just kind of showing it, I guess in real time, where you don't see the onion skin. So I'm thinking that, like I said, this might help to show and explain, hopefully a little bit better, mainly for those who are new to animating in Maya. Anyhow, so from here, okay, that's frame 20 is the contact. So the next layer I'm showing is going to show some notes, right? So a lot of words, just bear with me. So the first bounce, right? You want to, when you plan for your own animation, because I'm gonna have the class make their own variation of this exercise. So yeah, you're gonna have to put in your own different units, right, to plan it out, and your own distance traveled to plan it out. Hell, it could be more of a vertical leap, you know, or it could be a lunging wide leap. Who knows? But the whole point is that you have to plan your bouncing animation before animating. Specifically, the frame count, right? How many frames to the midway point? How many frames to the end point? Frame count versus the distance traveled. So the distance traveled, 15 units traveled halfway, 15 units traveled for the landing. I talked about this in the video where I was just spewing out a word salad, you know what I mean? So that's why, like I said, that's the reason why I made this, so you can see a bigger picture. Blah blah blah. You want to plan your first hop, the frame count, so that it can be divided equally in 2. So here I wrote down here 12 frames total for the entire hop, and the mid arc, right? The mid arc, which is the high point as well, right, is exactly halfway at 6 frames. So here to here is 6 frames. Here to here for the landing is also 6 frames. So you can see here 8 to 14. 14 is the midway point. 6 frames. 14 to 20 is another 6 frames. The reason why this is important is that, and where I talk about divide it equally in two to be able to do that, right? You want even numbers, not odd numbers. When frames and distance counts can be evenly divided, right? Frames and the distance, if they each can be evenly divided, it makes for a stronger visual arc, right? And better graph editor curves. Basically, you have to go through it and experience it to understand fully what I'm talking about, right? I'm just trying to help prevent it. If you try to just wing it and try to just eyeball it, you can get into a muddy situation, basically, is what can happen. But if you do some subtle planning, right, where your numbers can be divided in half, you know, and the units traveled and the frames total, if they can be divided in half, it just makes your life so much easier. It really, 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 really does. Especially the distance traveled, you know, because if you just eyeball it, you know, and within Maya, you're just gonna be going back and forth, trying to make a nice arc, you know. On top of that, you're also wrestling with the frame count, trying to have a nice balance between these two different things, frames versus the distance traveled, you know, spacing and timing, you could say. Anyhow, so that's what I want to talk about. I'm gonna insert this video, probably this part of the video at the beginning from one of my other videos while I was doing the process. Anyway, let me go on. I'm gonna hide that for now. Okay, I'm gonna click this on. This here, right, is the roll that I did, right? See that? A subtle little roll where you could see it slightly rolling. It's gonna be slightly tilting down, right? And then pop. Here's the second hop. As you notice, it is shorter than the first hop, right? That's frame 26. That's the midway point. Frame 31 is the contact point. So you can see that. And then the next one is going to have some notes. Same thing. Where 5 frames to the midway point, 5 frames for the landing. Obviously, it can be divided in 2. And you notice that in the previous one, right? Let me hide this. It was 15 units traveled, halfway, 15 units traveled for the landing, 12 units total. So the whole point is that the frames and the distance traveled gets lesser and lesser. That's the other important thing I want to point out. Like noticeably fewer, weaker, you could say. Because the previous one, right, 15 units versus 8 units. So it's clearly a huge distance, you know, distance that is noticeable, you know what I mean? Long, huge jump, shorter jump, so that the audience as well as you can feel the energy getting weaker and weaker and dissipating. That's what I kind of wanted to point out. Here, 12 frames total, 10 frames total. So this one is not so much, right? Just 2 frames. But just even 2 frames less, right, can and will make a noticeable difference, right? Even if it's just 2 frames, right? 12 frames versus 10 frames, right? Here is a slight roll, right? You can see the rolling, from 31 to 32. And then finally, the very last roll, boom, hop, the very last hop. 3 frames to the midway point, which is 35. Right, from 32 to 35 is 3 frames. You don't count this, you count 1, 2, 3. You don't count the first one. If you count the first one, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so you don't do that, you count after the fact. So this was the contact point. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Total 6 frames. Whereas previously it was 10 frames. Now we're down to 6 frames. Before that it was 12 frames total. 6 and 6. Right? See how it gets weaker and weaker and weaker. Hide that, hide that. As for the distance traveled, I didn't write it down because hopefully by now you will understand that the distance that's traveled is obviously way less, you know, from this to this. Right? It's a third or half or whatever, right? Weaker, weaker, weak. Strong, and then weaker, weaker, right? Finally, it rolls to a stop, right, at frame 45. But it moves forward, right, to a stop, and also rolls to a stop. So that's pretty much the whole entire thing, right? Because I believe in, I forgot which video it was, maybe the 5th one or was it the 6th one, right? I felt that I could show a little bit better presentation about the frame counts, because the frame counts and the distance and everything, these are super duper important, right? I used to just eyeball it, like the distance and the frame counts. I used to think like, hey, you know what, how about this much for the halfway, how about this much for the end point, and I didn't notice that they weren't even, because if you have evenly divided frames and evenly divided distance, your arcs in your graph editor will be that much more manageable, easier to handle, right? Because you get nice full arcs rather than an arc that is kind of lopsided. All of that you will only know by experiencing it and doing it and stuff like that. So that's the end of that. I think I might put this either, I forgot which part, but I'm gonna shove it in there in one of the previous videos. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much everything. I think I will put this on the classroom folder as well. Yeah. Alright, so that's the end of that. Bye.